Okay, let's talk about your launch. Let's talk about the launch that you need to do because you do not want to show up slowly. You don't want to show up slowly. Every successful brand, every successful business, every successful product starts with a successful launch. Now, there's a reason you're watching this video, and that's because either you've got a business and you want to grow that business, or you want to start a business. I'm Jeff Walker, and for the last 8 years, I've been training entrepreneurs how to launch their businesses and how to launch their products. I've trained thousands of entrepreneurs, and they have done hundreds of millions of dollars. So I can say this with a lot of certainty. There has never been a better time to start a business. There's never been a time where there's more opportunity in the world. There's never been a greater time to be an entrepreneur. These are truly the glory days to launch your business. If you look at it, the internet gives you this massive global platform. The tools that are available to build a business online just weren't there a few years ago. And frankly, the training, it just wasn't there. Now you've got access to amazing training. So these are the glory days to launch your business. Now there's a downside to all this. There's a danger. And it reminds me of that quote that goes, we have met the enemy and he is us. So the deal is it's easier than ever for you to start your business, but it's also easier for thousands of others. And that's why you need to launch. That's why you can't just depend on hope and hope that your business does well. You need to launch. You cannot show up slowly. You cannot start slowly. I mean, it's literally impossible to start slowly and survive. It just doesn't work that way. Because, your business withers away, you have cash flow problems, you lose momentum, you lose energy. You can't start slowly and survive. That's what this video is all about. It's about showing you how to launch. Think about, in the launch, really, it's beyond just that launch. It's like where are you going to be in 3 years from now? If we met 3 years from now, will you have a thriving business? Will your life be substantially better than it is now? If we met 3 years from now, would you be happy with your progress? You gotta start, you gotta launch. So in this video, I'm gonna be showing you my 3 main big guns when it comes to launching. I've got more ways to launch. I've got like 6 or 7 different types of launches, but I'm gonna be showing you the 3 big guns in this launch. These are the go-to launches that you're going to use over and over. These launches are they're gonna become the framework of your marketing. Now, if you didn't see my last video, the core concepts, the core elements, look up at the top. There's going to be a link to that first video, the core elements. And be sure to check that one out. We're going to take those elements and then we're going to drop them into these 3 big guns, the 3 big launches. And one of them, the JV launch, that's how you can start with no list and no product and basically get paid to build your business and get paid to create your product. So let's get started. Let's get to your launch. So I'm not sure what your situation is, but when I first started my business, there was only one word for it, and it was desperation. You see, back then, I was a stay-at-home dad. I was home taking care of a couple babies while my wife was out making a living, supporting the family. We didn't have much money whatsoever. The family budget at that point, it was so tight. I put together this budget, and our disposable income, meaning the money we had left over after food and rent, was $400 per year. So there was not a lot of money to go around. And I remember one day, I looking out the front window, middle of the day, and I see my wife drives up, and I'm like, what's going on? Middle of the workday, she's coming home. She comes walking in the door, and she was just in tears. She said, Jeff, I just need a change. I can't keep on doing this. I have to have some time with my kids. I'm getting up in the dark. I'm driving to work. I'm coming home in the dark. Can't you just figure out some way to make some money to help support the family, to take the pressure off? And this just was like heartbreaking because I had nothing going on. I hadn't made any money in years. I'd just been home taking care of the kids. I'd been a square peg in a round hole in the corporate world, so I left that world behind. And I quit it, came home with the kids. My wife was out, supporting the family. It was dead end for me. So at that point, the only thing I could think of was to try to go back to school, get a degree, and then maybe get back into the work world. And I know this wasn't a good plan. It doesn't sound like a good plan because the work world, that corporate world, was a complete failure for me the first time around. But I thought maybe it'll be better this next time around. So I'm like, how can I get into school? How can I even get into school? Like, I don't have anything on my resume to impress them with. And I came up with this idea to start publishing online. I figured I'd start publishing online, put that on my resume. I could go to school, and then maybe I'd get a job. I could support the family. So I had this big long-term plan. Looking back, it was a horrible plan, but it was the only one I could come up with because I just didn't see any other way out. So I started publishing online. Back then, I had a real interest in the stock market. I wasn't a stockbroker. I didn't have, I wasn't a registered investment advisor. I didn't have any credentials, any initials after my name or anything. But I did have a strong interest in the market, and I'd studied it. I knew a lot about it. And so I started publishing about it. I started publishing a newsletter. That first newsletter went out to 19 people. So that was basically all my friends, all my family, everyone I knew who had an email address. And this was back, in 1996. So not everyone had email addresses. Certainly didn't have Facebook back then or any kind of social media or anything. These are like 19 friends and family. And I sent that first newsletter out to those 19 people. And actually, I'm exaggerating a little bit because it wasn't 19 people. It was 19 email addresses. One of those email addresses was my second email address, and one was my wife's email address. So it was really 17 people outside of our immediate family. But 19 felt better to me, so I put those names on my distribution list, and I sent it out. And so I just started publishing gradually. I was actually publishing twice a month. And the funny thing happened was I started to get more subscribers just through word of mouth. And I put up the most basic website. I couldn't even afford a domain name back then. So it was like some free web hosting space that came with my email account. And I started publishing, and it gradually built up. And soon I had hundreds of people on that list. And then I started to approach 1,000 subscribers. And at that point, I thought, well, maybe I could sell these people something. The problem is that I had no idea how to sell anything. I'd never been a salesman in my life. I hadn't studied sales. I didn't know anything about sales. So I stumbled onto this idea. Well, frankly, I was scared to ask for the order. I was scared to ask them to give me any money because I was giving them this free newsletter. And so I just started romancing them with a bunch of great stuff. I gave them great content after great content after great content. If you think about it, this is the precursor. This is the first version of that sideways sales letter. I just tried to be super cool to them and give them great stuff. And then that led up into asking for the sale. And my first product was a newsletter, a paid newsletter about the stock market that I sent out via email. It was very simple back then. But I romanced them. I gave them all this good stuff. And then I sent out emails asking them if they wanted to subscribe to my newsletter. The amazing thing was I actually made some sales. And that was the first launch, the first product launch formula launch. And I did $1,650 in that launch. Now, I don't know where you're at. Money's a funny thing. People look at money in different ways. But, so for some of you, $1,650 it'd be like, why bother? For others, it'd be like, that'd be amazing. Well, for me back then, I was doing backflips over that $1,600 because, like I said, our disposable income for the year was $400. It was amazing. In fact, at that point when I did that $1,650, I said, wow, if I did this once, I can do it again. And I can do it again. And who knows, I might even get better at it as I do it again and again. And actually, that's when I abandoned that whole idea of going to school and going back and getting a degree and going into the work world. I was done with that because I had this vision of launch stacking. I didn't call it that at the time, but I saw this possibility that I might get better. And the funny thing is that I did get better. The next launch, was maybe 6 months later, and I built up my list and I built up my skills. And the next launch actually did $6,000. That's this little check mark over there, $6,000. So I quadrupled my result, or almost quadrupled my result. $6,000. That was amazing. I couldn't believe it. It was just like over a matter of a few days, I made $6,000. Then the next launch did $8,000. And I was like, this is awesome. And then I sort of pulled back and I came up with a new offer and a new product. And I came out with this. This is the launch that brought my wife home. It was a launch that did $34,000. And when I did that, I'm like, hey, we got to start thinking about having you go to part-time or leave your job because we're on the success train now. Then After that one, so this is the $34,000. And then again, I developed a new product, a new offer, and I took everything I'd learned up to then, and I really applied this sideways sales letter. And here, we're talking about the internal launch. So the internal launch is the launch that you just do to your list. You don't depend on any partners or anything, so you don't have to go looking for partners. You just build up your email list. And that's what I did. I started with 19, and I built that list up. And I did internal launch after internal launch using the sideways sales letter, the 3 pieces of pre-launch content, and then you ask for the order. Well, that next launch, that was the one that sort of rocked the marketing world after word of it got out, because that one did $106,000. $106,000 in a single week, in 7 days. That became known sort of famously in the marketing world as 6 figures in 7 days. And so to go from these 19, now this didn't happen overnight. This was, the first one with 1650 was in a few months. The 34,000 was within a year and a half of getting started. This 106,000, that was 4 years later. So it didn't happen overnight. But then again, I didn't have anyone to train me on this stuff. I was inventing everything. That list of 19 subscribers, that eventually built up to 80,000 subscribers. And you do that just by adding, 30 subscribers a day. That's really what I did. I added 30 subscribers a day. That adds up to, almost 1,000 subscribers a month. That's 12,000 a year. And this is a real business I was building, and I was doing that launch stacking. I was making every launch was getting better and better and better and better. So launch stacking is this idea: you build your list, you build your momentum, you build your skills, you build your offers, you build your knowledge of the market, and your launches get better and better and better. The amazing thing is that with the humble beginnings I had, 19 subscribers when I started out, not having a clue about how to start a business, not having sold anything in my life or having any sales experience whatsoever, not having anyone to train me or show me anything, because this was back in the internet dark ages, I was actually able to sell $1 million worth of product. Now, that didn't happen overnight. It actually took me 6 years to get there. But yes, I actually sold $1 million. This is my product that I created, $1 million, and it took 6 years to get there. So, again, that might sound like a long time. For me, whereas with $400 of disposable income, it was unbelievable success. I could not believe it. My wife was able to retire. She was home with the kids. It was amazing. But I actually brought on a partner in that business. And one day that he decided to go a different way, and the partnership broke up. So it was time for me to start a new business. And frankly, I was ready to leave the stock market behind. It was getting to be a grind, publishing all the time. And so I decided to start this new business. And this time, I decided to use a seed launch. So that first launch that I told you about, that internal launch, I'd been using internal launches in this business. But the second time around, I wanted a seed launch because I wanted to be able to create a product basically in partnership with my clients. And I wanted to get paid up front. So this time, I went with the seed launch. Seed launch, again, it's great if you have no list and no product. You want to think about it like you need to have a small list. 50 to 100 people would be great. These days, it's easy to get that in social media. If you just start publishing about something on Facebook and, a couple times a week, publish about whatever topic you want to start your business in, you can attract followers very quickly. Go out, take part in the social media discussions. Very easy to build those. Go crazy. Get 200 or 300 people on the list. That'd be even better. But I've seen people do this starting with 30 or 40 people. And so this is how the seed launch looks. So think of these dots here as maybe that's 10 people per dot or so. So I don't know how many dots I've got there, but let's just say it's 12 of them. And we've got 120 people on the list. Now, the thing about really small lists like this is they tend to be very, very responsive. Small lists are extremely responsive because of this concept of recency is one of them. And the other one is that they know you. They really feel like they know you. You feel like you know them. You probably have interactions with them. So small lists can be very, very responsive. So you put together a very simple sideways sales letter, basically here a couple pieces of pre-launch content, as opposed to like over here with the internal launch, you really do the classic 3 pieces of pre-launch content in the sales letter. Here you can do 1 or 2 pieces of pre-launch. Now, one of the things I want to mention is the seed launch is great if you are just starting out. Absolutely great for that. But it's also great if you have a current business, but you have a new offer you want to come out with. You want sort of help creating that product. You want to test out an offer. And I still use seed launches to this day. I did one just a few months ago. It was so much fun. I loved doing it. So anyways, you put out a couple of small pieces of pre-launch content, and then the way you make your offer is that you're actually going to deliver it via a series of calls. So let's say you were going to teach guitar, and the message in here in the pre-launch could be, people have been asking me, I've been publishing on my blog, I've been publishing on Facebook about tips about how to learn guitar. People keep on asking me if I would just go ahead and teach it. So what I've decided to do is I put together a series of teleseminars or webinars. You can pick whichever one you want. You put together a series of teleseminars, and then you deliver your content over 3 teleseminars. You could do 5 if you want, if you got a more in-depth topic and you need 5 calls to cover it, but you could just do 3 calls. And what you do is you make this offer. Generally, what you're looking for is, it'd be ideal if you could get 20 or 30 people in your program. And I'll explain why. Because what you do is after they buy from you, they go through your little mini sideways sales letter, and then they buy from you, then the first thing you do is you send them to a survey. And the survey, you're asking them what they need to know about the topic. And it could be just like, hey, I'm really excited about this program. I'm getting ready to start teaching it. I just need to make sure that I cover, cover this topic completely. Could you do me a favor and just tell me, if you're going to sit down with me for lunch or for coffee, what would be the top 2 questions you would ask me? So you send your people through that survey. Those questions tell you what you need to cover in your product. So after that first survey, you could just take a look at it, take all the questions that everyone sent in and group them into 3 main topics. Those 3 topics are your calls. So then you do your first call, and you're basically getting on there and just answering the questions people have asked you. Then after that call, you run them through another survey that basically says, hey, that was a great call. Love teaching that. Love being on the call with you. Great interaction. I just have a couple questions for you. Is there anything that isn't 100% clear about that, what I covered on that last call? So that's the first question. So the second question is, our next call is going to be about X, whatever it's going to be about. What are your top 2 questions about that topic? And then that tells you what you need to cover in that next call. And then you just keep on doing that survey call for as many calls as you want to do. Now, one of the things that will make all the difference for your business is that you always want to over-deliver. This is something I absolutely obsess about. So it's really easy in the seed launch to over-deliver by just doing a bonus call that you don't announce up front. You don't announce it until you're somewhere in between the first and the second call. You just say, hey, by the way, I told you you're going to get 3 calls, but we're actually going to have a bonus call. The bonus call is going to be the best call of them all. You're going to love it. And then after your final regular call, the call you promised, then you send them to another survey. I just want to know if there's any questions whatsoever. We're going to have wide open Q&A on this next call. And then you send them into the bonus call. The whole thing, this whole entire process, because there's so much interaction, because there's so many surveys, and on most of these calls, you can actually take live questions. I love taking live questions on my call. Because you're doing that all the way through, you are going to create a great product. A lot of people worry about creating products, and they worry that the product's not going to be good enough or that it's not going to be perfect. This product is tuned to the market because every step of the way, you're asking people what they need to know. And it just creates the best product you ever could. You end up with very, very happy clients. You generally end up with great testimonials. You can usually end up with great case studies. And then because you're recording these calls all the way through, you end up with the recordings. If you did 3 calls and they each lasted an hour to 90 minutes, you're going to end up with 4 or 5 hours of audio. You can take that transcribed. Those 4 or 5 hours of audio are probably going to be 60 or 80 or maybe even 90 pages of content. So now you've got an audio product, you've got a book, and you've learned how to teach it. You've learned how to create a great product. And that's why this is just such an amazing and simple process. And frankly, the technical stuff is super simple. I mean, you're using what we call a bridge line to do those teleseminars. And you can go get a free one at freeconferencecall.com. And the technology is basically you have to dial into a number and everyone else dials into that number so then they can hear you. And then you talk into the phone and you teach. Or you can do it via a webinar, and that's a little bit more complicated, but not much more complicated. So this is simple stuff. So in any case, the second business, this sort of Jeff 2.0, where I was reinventing myself, I did this seed launch. Now, I did it just slightly different. I was actually on stage giving a presentation for this new product in this new market. And I basically gave like 75-minute presentation. That was the best presentation I could give in the world. And then I made an offer. It's like, hey, if you want to, be part, I'm going to have a deeper training on this. If you want to be part of it, it's going to be a series of 5 teleseminars. And boom, here it is. Buy it from me. And so that sort of 75-minute presentation where I gave it, really went through it, really went in depth. That was sort of my pre-launch content. I made that offer. Now, the thing is because I'm not a salesman, because I'm not a pitch man, this is like the first time I ever tried to sell something from stage like that. And there's a real art, and I didn't know the art. So I only sold 6 of them. I only sold 6 copies. Now, the good news is I charged a lot of money for it. And remember, this is a new business, and it had been a few months since my old business went away, so I was really interested in making some money. And so I did charge a lot of money for it. I actually charged $3,000. So that 6 sales was $18,000. So bad news, 6 sales when I'm speaking to a room, there's like probably near 300 people in that room. And if you don't have a frame of reference, selling 6 sales to 300 people is really pretty lame. It's lousy. So that's the bad part. The good part was I made $18,000, and compared to my start in the first business, Jeff 2.0, $18,000, woohoo, yay. All right. So, but then what I did was I promised him 5 calls. And because, like I said, I completely obsess about over delivery, I think it was like either 8 or 9 calls in total I did. But really, this is a new market. And all those calls helped me fine tune my new product. It helped me learn how to teach, learn how to create that product. That's the key about the seed launch, is that you get started right away, you get paid right away, you build some momentum right away, but you end up creating a fantastic product, and you create it very easily because all you're doing is you're just talking on the phone and you're answering questions, right? It's simple. So I did that, did that whole series of like 8 or 9 teleseminars. People loved it. Got great feedback. I actually got a bunch of case studies and testimonials. And then I did what they call the JV launch. And so the typical way we do this, I've got these numbered 1, 2, 3. So the typical way you'll do this is you'll start off with a seed launch, and then you build up into an internal launch, and then you go to a JV launch. So I did a little backwards. That since I was inventing this in the first place, that first business, these 2 didn't even exist. This is the only thing that existed. I invented it, right? So this is the first one I invented. So I did the internal launch first. This second business, I went seed launch, and then I went straight into a JV launch because I had no list at all in this market whatsoever, but I did know some JV partners. So JV stands for joint venture. Think of it like an affiliate. Someone else who's got a list of subscribers, and they will mail their list and tell them about your product. And in exchange, if you make sales to the people they send into your launch, then you will give them a commission. So this is what a JV launch looks like. It's basically this same sideways sales letter as you did up there, but here you're having your joint venture partners who they've already got the lists and they're mailing into your launch. So up here, you've got a sideways sales letter, 3 pieces of pre-launch content, 3 pieces of pre-launch content down here. Often it could be the same piece of pre-launch. In other words, often you can do an internal launch, put together your sideways sales letter, your pre-launch content, and then after that internal launch, then you could do a JV launch after you sort of figured out your numbers, your metrics, your offer, your systems. Then you can go recruit joint venture partners and do the sideways sales letter down here. The big difference is you're just getting these partners who have lists to mail into your sideways sales letter. So the great thing about a JV launch is they can be so highly leveraged. Because like think about up here, even at the end when I had 80,000 subscribers, I had 80,000 subscribers. But what if you got 3 or 4 or 5 joint venture partners and each one of them had 50,000 subscribers? You could see how these can really be very highly leveraged and really, take your results to a completely different level. And that's what the joint venture launches do. So I was coming out of here. I knew I had a great product that I created with the seed launch. And actually, again, I do obsess about great products. So what I did was I took what I learned in this process and I re-recorded everything, and I created books and CDs and DVDs and on and on. So, but I took what I learned in this process about the teaching and about the selling and about what could really make a difference in people's lives with this product. And then I went out and I recruited some joint venture partners. And I did a joint venture launch. And I got a lot of great support from these joint venture partners. And with this launch, this JV launch, again, I started with six sales, $18,000. With a JV launch, I did $600,000. So not a bad way to start this business. First business, $1,650, and I was really happy with that. But $600,000, holy cow. And, the thing with that is when you do have joint venture partners, you end up paying them commissions. So in this case, I was paying 50% commissions. So, I paid my partners, $300,000 in commissions. That left me with $300,000. I had some additional costs, but still, I made a ton of money. And of course, when you do one of these launches, the joint venture partners are going out talking about how great you are, and that gives you great positioning in the market. All of a sudden, people see you as an expert or a guru. And of course, the sales didn't stop at $600,000. I kept on making sales. And in this business, this is sort of the Jeff 2.0 show. It took 6 years to hit $1 million in that first business. This time, it took me 6 months to get to $1 million in sales in this sort of the Jeff 2.0 business. That was awesome. This business was actually my current business. This was my first big launch for Product Launch Formula. So that put me in the game. I got all these new clients. I got all these great testimonials, all these great case studies. One of the things when you over-deliver is that you build up this massive goodwill in the market, and all of a sudden just people are saying great things about you, and you can't ever underestimate how powerful that is. It is just incredibly powerful. So then, a couple of years later, I came out with the 2.0 version of Product Launch Formula. That 2.0 version, huge, massive upgrade, and I've been doing so well in the market and making my partners so much money that I was able to get a lot more support that second time around. And this time, I hit $1 million. And it was actually 1.1 million, but just write down 1 million. But $1.1 million in the very first hour. So did the pre-launch, the sideways sales letter, sent people into that sales. It was a sales letter back then. $1.1 million in that first hour. Sales didn't stop after that first hour. We went on to do almost $4 million. So it's $3.73 million in sales. And I think that was like 34 hours those sales came in. Pretty amazing. And again, it hasn't stopped there. I've now sold $20 million worth of Product Launch Formula. Here we are over here, $1 million, 6 years the first time, 6 months the second time, 60 minutes the third time. So that's launch stacking. I mean, it's like starting off here, 19 subscribers, building up to $1,650 and continually getting better, $6,000, $8,000, $34,000, $106,000. You're building up your momentum, you're building up your list, you're building up your position, you're building up your knowledge of how to sell. You just get better every launch, better and better and better. Then I came out, I had these, I'd built up a lot of skills. I'd learned how to do it. And so then I came out with the joint venture launch, $20 million in sales later. It's been a crazy ride. I can hardly believe it. In fact, I mean, if I hadn't lived through it, I don't think I would believe it. But that is the very essence of launch stacking. 3 types of launches: the seed launch, the internal launch, the JV launch. Typically, when you're starting out, you will start out with a seed launch, then you go to an internal launch and go to a JV launch, but enormously flexible. You saw how I sort of jumped around. I started out with the internal launch. Second time around, I went straight from seed launch to JV launch. But that's the potential. That's what launch stacking can do for you. Okay, so let's talk about you. That was enough talking about me. I mean, the only reason I shared my journey is so that you could see what was possible. The thing is I get a lot more excited talking about my students and my clients, and I've seen many of them make crazy journeys as well, where they just started from scratch and have built serious businesses. So if you're watching this, you probably fall into one of 3 categories. First, you've got an existing business and you're looking to build that. Second, you might not have an online business. You might be some type of a practitioner, a health practitioner, or you're helping people with their money or their wellness or with a hobby or with a sport. And maybe you're working with people one-on-one, and it's time for you to start leveraging your time. It's time for you to start creating products and getting those products out there. And then the third category is maybe you are absolutely starting from scratch. You don't have a list, you don't have a product, you don't have a business. You don't even have an idea for a business. You don't know where to start. And so the thing is those 3 launches can fit every one of those categories. If you've got that great business already, then you are just one internal launch away from probably having the biggest week of your business history. I mean, it's super easy. Or if you have a new product you want to roll out and you're not so sure about it, you can do a seed launch. So an internal launch or a seed launch, or possibly maybe you've got some potential JV partners, and then you could do a JV launch, and that's where you really leverage up. Now, if you're in that second category, you're a practitioner of some type. Maybe you have got clients. Those clients would love to buy something from you, but you don't have a product yet. The seed launch is perfect. That's how you create a product that you know the market wants. That's how you know you create a great product. Do that seed launch first. Easy money, easy way to create that product, and then use that product and do a full-out internal launch. Now, if you're absolutely just starting from scratch, then the seed launch, it's all about the seed launch for you. This is how you create a product as easily as possible, as quickly as possible, and you don't have to spend a ton of time. You don't want to wait around, build up a huge list. You don't want to wait around, look for affiliates or joint venture partners. You just get started really quickly with that seed launch. And, I can't wait to hear your story, 3 months or 6 months from now of how you're able to start with that seed launch. So now I want to talk about the next video I've got for you, and that's the product launch blueprint. You are going to love this one. In fact, I think it's going to be the best of all of these videos. I basically just give away the farm. I'm going to walk you through the entire product launch process in that blueprint. I'm also going to have you're going to be able to download the blueprint. So it's going to be very, very cool. I think you're going to love it. But right now, what I would love for you to do is scroll down and first of all, hit that like button. Everyone likes to get those likes. Hit the like button, but scroll down and leave a comment. Tell me how you're going, which of these launches you're going to do, how it's going to fit into your life. And remember that question I asked you about 3 years from now. If we were to meet 3 years from now, how will your life have changed because of that launch? So scroll on down and leave a comment right now.